Welcome to the Dean Bleckman Show, live from Long Island. Free-flowing talk with a charismatic, down-to-earth host. Join Dean as he interviews and chats freely with his guests, ranging from superstar athletes to politicians, industry titans, and everyday folk with fascinating life stories. Dean educates, entertains, and most of all, touches people's lives. You're listening to the Dean Bleckman Show, live from Long Island.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dean Bleckman Show. And I am your host, Dean. Hello, everyone. Brian, how are you? Our guest today, Brian.
Hi, Dean. How are you? Nice to see you again.
Doing great. We have Ria Bo over across the Atlantic, over in the UK. Ria, good morning.
Good morning, all. Hi, Brian. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Ria. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, darling.
Anthony, how are you? Tech manager, Anthony.
Very good, very good. Pleasure to be here. Thank you, guys.
Great, great. Today, my guest is Brian McLaughlin, the award-winning author of A Flight Without Wings. His inspirational book, Brian vividly depicts his journey into heaven and his following return to life caused by massive head trauma injury sustained while vacationing in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, 23 years ago. How are you, Brian?
Much better today.
Good. It's amazing when you came in today. You loved my mom's show.
Yeah, I had to comment on that as quickly as I could because we listened to your show yesterday, and we were really impressed. We not only with the quality of the sound and everything, but with your story with your mom and your mom's story, and her take on your success as a family and as a business, and what she felt was the root and the core values that got you there. Really able to relate to that.
Brian, it's my understanding that you're a fraternal twin.
I am, so I can appreciate and relate to your family with two sets of twins, and difficult at times. You try to maintain an individuality of your own while still being part of a group, or at least a couple at that point. And I found there were times when it was very challenging to me anyway. And I think it's challenging to the parents as well, for them to find the proper way to afford the twins everything they need. They need individuality, yet they need to feel connected. And it's a very, very fine line and slippery slope that you follow with that.
What is very unusual is mom's story and dad's story, may rest in peace, is that how often do you hear two sets of twin boys, four in diapers at the same time?
Not in those days.
3 years later, it's Dean.
Yeah, not in those days. Today, fraternal twins are common with fertility drugs. But in those days, when I was born in 1953, it was uncommon. And I don't know, maybe more special. Certainly different. And how did you put it? Remarkable?
Well, I said that was you saying remarkable. I guess
somebody takes a drink.
I guess my sister-in-law Toby out in Freehold, New Jersey, she's going to have another drink because Brian just said remarkable.
I remember that.
But once again, back to twins. My older brothers, Neil and Brian, are identical twins.
Okay, wow, I didn't know that.
Ross and Steve are fraternal twins.
Oh my God!
So
was there a third type of twin that the Lloyds of London bet was based on?
Yeah, I lost the bet was based on me. I
understand. Right?
I lost the bet.
I thought there was only the two types.
No. So every day, these 59 years in my life, there's not a day that goes by that someone doesn't say to me, Dean, what's it like growing up not being the twin?
Well, I would imagine that has an upside and a downside to it, just like being a twin.
That's right. But, I see growing up on Long Island, very similar to me on the South Shore. I grew up on Freeport.
In Freeport you grew up, yeah, I heard that, yeah.
I'd love to hear just a little bit more history on you growing up on Long Island.
Well, I related very much to your upbringing, which sounded to me to be somewhere in the middle class range. Like maybe as though you had started out on the lower side and moved your way through to the upper side, and then from there traveled even further. I very similar for me. I grew up in a house where my father went to work every day. He was gone most of the day, but we always knew where to find him at 5:30 or 6 o'clock. Not unlike yourself, was at the dinner table. I related to that quite well. We went through the same process. No matter what was going on, what was happening, who you were seeing, we knew we were going to be at the dinner table when my father came home from work. And that was kind of the core of our existence at that time, was the family structure. And it was kind of, I guess it was kind of like my father debriefing the family when after he had been gone for 12 hours, and kind of tied us all together, and kept us involved in each other's lives through talking and through sharing what happened for the day and so forth and so on. And as much as we didn't, there were times when it was an annoyance to us. We were children. So a lot of our friends were out and about at that time, and we wanted to be with them. So it was kind of an annoyance. But you know what, as you grow older and you hopefully gain some wisdom, you realize what that did for you, and how you carry that through your life, and the effects that it has in your inner self and your inner being. They're very basic, simple, basic, but powerful.
We go over to Rhea over in the UK. Rhea, do you have anything to say at this point to Brian?
I do. I'm more than anything picking up on the dinner table thing, which I picked up with your mum, Dean, is, to break bread with friends, family is so important, isn't it? And I'm sure if you ask around to people, they would say that families aren't as close as what they once were. And your mum commented as well by saying, her grandchildren weren't brought up that way. So maybe it's the case where people listen to the show, pick up on the topic and say, right, okay, I'm going to drum it in my kids that no matter what you do, you make sure that everybody's there around the dinner table, and that debrief of, as you just said, Brian, by dad or whomever, to bring the family together again, so that family continues to have that hierarchy. Does that sound about right, Brian?
Yeah, it sounds like you're spot on with that. Unfortunately, we lost my father at an early age. He was only 65 when he passed, and so we've been struggling over the years to find a replacement, I suppose, because it's always good to have someone seated at the head of the table, I suppose. But we all carry the benefits of that with us in our adult lives. And as I said before, at the time when you're children, you don't quite understand what the importance of that is. But as you get older and hopefully wiser, you can enjoy the benefits of having that core of direction in your life.
I think it's really important. And the fact that dad comes in and says, it's the hunter-gatherer style, isn't it? One of, dad comes in, you pay respect to your father because he's your father. And for me, I feel that some of that's lost, and that is such a shame, and is caused all kinds of ramifications. But ultimately, that's where, for me, the goodness lies.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think that, simple in concept, where you say family and family values, it can sound a little oversimplified, but the effects of that, I think, are much further reaching than might initially indicate. I think in yesterday's show, Dean talked with his mom about, love, the lack of love, what children are exposed to today, and where their attention lies. And, having lost that family structure to some extent, I think is very far-reaching, and it affects many, many different facets of their lives. And they may not even realize why, what the problem is. Why am I missing this? Why do I not have a better sense of unity or appreciation of a family unit and their support and so forth? I think it's important to get back to that if it's possible.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's one of those things where, excuse me, we're almost scared to go to that hunter-gatherer style. Your dad's going to be home soon, so you get round the table, and people don't feel empowered within the family. They're scared of the authorities, where the government have got their nose in places where maybe in some cases they should, but I think in general they shouldn't. And that's a big concern for me, where they've just got into our business that they like to do, and that basic hierarchy of respect is not dished out anymore. What do you think, Dean?
I agree with you, Rhea. That's the way it should be, and it has been, and we got to get back to it being that way, as my mother expressed on the show yesterday. Get back to the old ways.
Yeah, we need somebody to guide that through, and obviously if we was a tribe or something, people would look to the elders, wouldn't they, to find the answers. If there was, within the subculture of a tribe or whatever, that they would look for the elders to find the answers. Hey guys, this isn't working. Go and speak to granddad, whoever, and he'll dispense those simple words of wisdom. Yeah, such a shame. I guess we could talk about it all day, but I think it's a really valid topic. Back to you, Dean.
I'll just mention, Rhea, that like my mother said, she'll continue to be on shows in the future. But one of the topics that's part of my platform and my show is family. So I'm hoping that my radio show and many guests like Brian and others in the future that will have many stories about family, and the show can be part of something that will hopefully that I can make a difference in people's lives and trigger for people to spend more time with their family.
Hear to that.
So, Brian, I just want to mention that not only is the clarity coming in so unbelievable that Rhea is over in a town called Milton Keynes over there in the UK. That's about 50 miles outside of London.
Wow.
It is just, I'm just ecstatic that this is only my second show and that you're here in the studio. Your lovely wife, Lynn, is here.
That's right.
Hi, Lynn.
Lynn Rhea's saying hello. Hi. So I'm glad to have her, but it's just amazing here in the Long Island studio in Setauket, in my home, that Rhea's just coming in, just unbelievable.
She sounds as good as you do, Dean. Absolutely. I suppose we're supposed to thank
Brian,
we're supposed to thank Anthony at this point.
Anthony will get his chance.
Thank you, Anthony.
But not only this young lady over in the UK, not only is she brilliant, but I do have to say that everything that's evolved in since I decided to have a radio show, that she has just been a wealth of experience and help to me to where we are today.
Yeah, it sounds like it to me. It sounds as though, well, number one, the quality of your equipment, allows it to happen. But number two, Rhea sounds very much in tune with the issues, with your issues and the issues around her. And from what I heard yesterday and from what I've heard so far today, she sounds, very much in tune with that. And you can tell she's thinking about it because the questions she asks are on point and very good and very helpful.
On that note, I do have to add that Rhea has the most amazing accent.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. I'm sure we sound like, I'm not sure what we sound like to Rhea, but, the English accent is just, I don't know what it is. It's so pure and it's so refined And it's a pleasure for me to listen to, as I'm sure it is to you, Dean.
I knew my guests and my listening audience is going to love Rhea's voice, and she has told me that her audience out there in Europe is going to love my voice. So together we're a blockbuster category killer, what I say in this genre. Yeah. Right, Rhea?
We definitely sound different, Dean, that's for sure. Yeah, I think, what do I think? Do English people like American accents? I think so. You know, we was kind of brought up with movies. I mean, when I toured the States, I'd heard of Everywhere because of movies as a kid. So it's all very familiar, although really quite different in essence. Yeah, and the one thing about an English accent is in the movies, we seem to have been cast, particularly like the Hollywood movies, as the baddies. I think it's because of the way we speak. If you get a guy that speaks well, as it were, it's an ideal or typecast, if you like, into the baddie, which seems to be becoming more and more common. I think it's because you, for want of a better word, slur the vowels, and we are more pointy with our accents, as it were, and it kind of suits a baddie. Have you ever thought about that before?
I've thought of that, but you made me think about it more just now.
Yeah, check out the films, Dean. A lot of the baddies are English.
Rhea, there's not a day or a moment that I don't learn anything new from you.
There's more coming, darling.
It's remarkable.
Amazing.
I guess another drink.
Yeah, remarkable.
You can't get away from it, can you? I mean, how many superlatives can you say to something? I mean, I guess remarkable is one of them. You're going to have the conversation with that lady, Dean, at some point.
But I do want to give some credit here. Right next to me here in the studio, my friend Anthony, who's the one that basically found me back in December. My wife Sharon and I were in a local restaurant in Smithtown, Long Island, that we frequent. And Anthony happened to be sitting next to us, and he reached over to me, and he said, "My name is Anthony." I said, "I'm Dean." He said, "I got to tell you, you got the most amazing voice I've ever heard before. Have you ever thought of doing a radio show?" I said, "I've never thought of doing a radio show, but I've heard thousands and thousands of people say to me while I've been in business for 30 years, and whether I'm at the car wash, Starbucks, restaurants, wherever I go in life, constantly I'm told, wow, you got some voice. Even once in a while, I hear you got a sexy voice." But
Do you tell your wife that?
Go ahead, Rhea. I'm sorry.
Do you tell your wife that?
She knows that. She knows that. Sharon knows that.
That one was for you, Sharon.
Yep. But Anthony was the gentleman that found me back in December. He triggered all this to evolve, and I'm grateful to you for that.
I'm grateful to be here. I really am. It's been a beautiful process how everything's evolved. So I'm anxious to see what happens going forward here.
Why don't we move on to what brought us here? First of all, how you and I met, Brian. You and I met through a mutual acquaintance.
Yes, we did.
It just so happens that Rhea and Anthony, Brian and I happened to shop at the same men's store out in Long Island.
That's correct. Yeah.
Town called
How
Woodbury.
Metrosexual.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we met through a mutual salesperson in the store. That when the salesperson heard that I was launching a radio show, this individual said to me, "Dean, I've got an unbelievable guest for you to have." So that's what brought Brian and I together here.
That's correct, yeah.
The only thing is, I'm not going to ask him how does he do with altercations there at that store. We won't get into that.
No,
You should actually.
that's a bit of a spot. Yeah, I remember getting an email from you and being quite surprised, not knowing where it came from, who it came from, who you were, what your connection to me might have been. This is before I spoke to, our mutual friend that we speak of. And it wasn't until I saw him again, I had occasion to see him again, that he asked if I had gotten an email from Dean Blackman. I said, wow, yeah. I said, I guess I have you to thank for that. And, that's how he explained it to me. And you're right. He thought it would be a good connection. And so here we are.
Now, how is it with you day to day when it comes to shopping for your clothes? Do you basically do that on your own, or does Lynn help you? How does it all work?
No, I don't know if we can use his name on the air or not, and I'm trying not to because I haven't heard you use his name, so I'm just being cautious. If you tell me I can use his name, then I can feel more comfortable. But,
do it, Brian. Do it.
Go ahead, Brian. You've got my permission.
All right. So anyway, when you ask if Lynn, helps or so forth, I count on Marco, and Marco's been. You alluded to a salesperson or something. I give him a little bit more credit than that, and I call him my haberdasher. And I've basically gone with his suggestions over the years, and it goes back as it does for you for some 20 or more years. So that's his business. He's in the business of making you look good, and so. I let him do his work and his job.
See, at the men's store for 35 years, they know Sharon well. Sharon does.
Does she?
She does all my shopping.
Okay. Well,
I then go to try it on, but she does all the shopping. I once had an incident many years ago. Sharon was ill one day, and dehydration. She had to be hospitalized one night across the street from the studio. Stony Brook Hospital. Yes, Stony Brook Hospital. And I had an experience that never happened to me before where Sharon wasn't with me. So she had to be hospitalized, and I had a phone call from a friend. And that friend said to me, Dean, why don't you come up to our house and come over for dinner? I said, come over for dinner? I don't need to come over for dinner. I need you to come over tomorrow morning and put out my suit, jacket, and tie.
Yeah, pick up the slack. And oddly enough, when you're talking about that, I buy a good portion of Lynn's clothing, my wife's clothing. From, I can tell you whatever designer you want to mention with shoes or, any type of clothing. I know the fabrics, so I know what size she wears in a particular fabric. How it hangs, how it drapes, what size the particular designer shoe. She'll wear a different Louboutin than she will in a Coach or something like that. And it's not a control thing. It's more of a just an enthusiastic process of me wanting to buy her things, get her things that she might enjoy wearing. But it's just the opposite of yours.
Rhea, this discussion, I can't let it go without you having a final say. You must have something you want to say about this topic we're discussing.
I do. Well, firstly, you can't have too many shoes and boots. So that's the general rule.
Absolutely.
I've got it bad. And I think it's amazing that you shop for her, Brian. I'm not, you've made me think now. I'm thinking, God, how would I deal with that? The ugly truth is probably not very well, actually. It would probably throw me off, Brian.
Yeah, it does. I tell you what, it does throw a lot of people off when they hear about that, and they assume, for one reason or another, that it's a control thing, and it really isn't. It's more just it's an enthusiastic involvement in her life and the way she presents. And I wouldn't, if I listen, once in a while I make an error, and it's just something that she just doesn't like and won't take to. And so I have no problem with her not using that sort of thing. But I think that she appreciates the pureness of my involvement with it, and can appreciate it from that perspective, as opposed to some sort of a controlling thing.
You're not a Virgo, are you?
No, I'm a Scorpio.
Oh, okay. I'm surprised.
Really? Well, it's funny too, because my twin is a Scorpio also.
Excellent. That's good to know.
Anyway, it's your reaction to it is not uncommon, and it's just It really doesn't. How do I say this without sounding? Listen, what I have between Lynn and I, the way I look at it is, as long as Lynn appreciates it for what it is, then I'm not so concerned about what the rest of the world thinks of it. And
I think that's great.
Yeah. And
I'm all for it, darling.
That's the way it's been, and it works for us. So we will continue on with that.
Brian, your book is just remarkable. What I read, it's just a great book and very inspirational.
Oh, thank you. It's life altering, life changing, transforming. It's
very intimate, very inspirational. I'd like you to maybe just start from the very beginning of, it's the anniversary. The timing of your anniversary happens to fall on 9/11 every year.
Yeah.
Of your accident.
Yeah.
And what if you could just describe what happened there back in Playa del Carmen? I know that every year you went, Lynn's family had a house there. And
yeah, still does. And for years we went back on the anniversary just to and met a couple of people there that were present the night that I had my accident. And that's since sort of, gone by the wayside as far as visiting and so forth. But certainly for the first few years, we went back there. It was a very profound experience in my life. And, I felt it important. The first year I went back, I tracked down the ophthalmologic surgeon who was on duty at the time. And we went into Cancun and met with him, and he wanted us to come to dinner at his house and meet his family, which is it's not what you might expect here. But there, it's very personal to them, and their success and their treatment of patients is very, very personal, and they feel your pain. I remember my brother speaking to him after I get back here to the States. I remember him calling the doctor and them going back and forth a few times because the doctor in Mexico was concerned about how, what the results of the treatment were. He was dealing with some very trying issues, in as much as they didn't have the equipment to properly diagnose the extent of the injuries. So he had to patch me up, put my eye back in my head, and kind of send me off to better equipment. And he was concerned. And he did put our mind at ease on one issue. And evidently there you expose yourself to a certain condition if the iris in your eye has been exposed to the air. And in my case, the globe was ruptured and it ran right across the iris. And there's a condition called sympathetic ophthalmia, which it's a nervous condition, or a sympathetic nerve condition, whereby the other side, the other eye, may react to the injury of the one in the case where the iris is exposed, which would have lent me completely blind. So that was a big concern coming back to the States, and they weren't really too familiar with the process of that. So we wound up calling the ophthalmologic surgeon in Mexico to clarify it some more. And he indicated that he had only seen the condition once, and it was on a chicken. So he didn't seem too concerned about it. So we let it go, and we rolled the dice.
How did this accident happen?
Well, I fell down a short staircase, half a staircase, and landed my face on a raised concrete planter around a tree in the restaurant. Never got my hands out, and just planted my face onto this concrete, and it's completely busted up. I mean, completely rearranged, and as I said, they didn't have the equipment to properly diagnose the extent of it, which was a lot more than they had originally considered. And luckily here, after the fact, after it happened, with all of the problems, and you have to remember, in Mexico, you don't pick up the phone and dial 911. I mean, they don't have that sort of service there.
Brian, let me just pause for a minute with what you're saying. I can't imagine what you went through. There's been times I've been out of the country, and the first day that I land, I have a massive toothache, and just dealing with out of the country with what you have to deal with a health situation is just a lot easier when you're home. So I could only imagine with what you were going through.
Yeah, unlife-threatening injury. It's a little more. It's a little more pronounced. It's a little more. I don't know what the word would be, but it just completely frustrates you when there's nothing. You're so used to it here, and you hope that you don't have to use it here, but it's there. It's always there. And we had a waiter that was helping us that night, or serving us, and he wound up running, I don't know, a dozen blocks or so in the Mexican heat to a little clinic that they have, and to summon the ambulance, which was in its first day of service. And he had them come back and pick me up, load me up, and off we went to Cancun, because there was no hospitals at all in Playa del Carmen. So that's how it went. I mean, they it was very crude. They get on the highway, the driver and the passenger or the attendant kind of bless themselves before they enter the highway, because so many people lose their lives on the highway. And off we went. And we were lucky to get a surgeon that was on duty in the hospital in Cancun, who dealt a lot with eyes, and that was the immediate problem for me, because the globe was avulsed and ruptured.
So Brian, I'm sure your family, Lynn, they couldn't wait to get you into New York, get you into a hospital in New York. How long was it after the accident? How long did it take to finally be airlifted and arrive at JFK in New York?
2 or 3 days. My best guess is that if they had more equipment, they probably would not have wanted me to travel. But in as much as they didn't have the equipment and they had lost me at least once, they really wanted to get me out of there as quickly as possible and to put me into possibly better hands. Although they were really quite good, and the surgeons here commented on the work that had been done, that it was done well, and they were impressed that it had been done in Mexico. But it was only a couple of days, 2 or 3 days that I was there. My mother and my brother came down. They were kind of summoned because the doctors didn't know if I was going to survive the whole thing, and if I did survive, that I would have any memory at all. So they were facing some major issues. And so they came down. My brother stayed in the room in the hospital with me, was able to attend to me, in as much as he's a doctor here. He was given the right to attend to me in that hospital, and have to deal with a lot of politics and legalities like you might have to here. But so Lynn, working for the airlines, was able to contact, after much ado, she was able to contact some of her friends and set up an airlift by, we mentioned their name, American Airlines.
Sure you
No,
can.
we can't. Oh, sorry.
No, you could mention it.
They were able, through her friends, they were able to speed up the process. And so we were brought to the airport, privately through security, we just bypassed everything. And although we were on a commercial flight, they sort of blocked out portion of first class for us, and off we went. We were met at JFK the same way by an ambulance crew from the town that I live in, and they brought me from the airport, from the airplane, into my front door at home. And then we started the process of selecting a surgical team that was qualified in each different area that they needed to reconstruct me. You know, so
I've done a lot of research on this topic, this near-death experience that we're going to call NDE, and it seems like there's been a lot of celebrities that have experienced this. There's a lot of celebrities that have experienced it. I think the most recent was the entertainer Tracy Morgan. I see. There's always been, this is a show that my guess, as I say, and you see it on the website, and I've said it all over again. This is, whether the show's controversial or not, this is a platform for discussion. People get to come on my show, and what we're looking to do for my audience and my listeners, we're looking to entertain, we're looking to educate, and we're looking to inspire. And I find your story is so real with inspiration that it's unbelievable. So
that makes me feel really good. It really does. And in as much as, when you come back from something like this, some experience like this, and, somewhere along the line, it's inevitable that you reach a point where you say, why me? Why was I sent back? I mean, to me, it was so definite that I was sent back. I mean, my deceased father spoke the words to me. It wasn't something that I gathered from, some sort of peripheral information or what. He spoke the words to me. You have to go back. So somewhere along the line, you question yourself as to why I was sent back. And when you sit here and talk to me and tell me that you find the story inspirational, is quite satisfying and fulfilling to me. It answers part of my question as to why I was sent back. And I have felt, or I've developed the feeling that in as much as I was there and I felt the things, I saw things, that possibly I could lend some comfort to people who have either lost someone or for themselves. Maybe they question or they fear passing over for themselves. I mean, I don't know, but I think that I can lend comfort to a person who's thinking that and is concerned about that. And thanks for validating that for me.
I see that a lot in your book, and what you say a lot is not connected to religion.
Right.
That a lot of times with people that experience this near-death experience, NDA, that it's connected. There's a lot of religious connotation to it. The second quality I see in you, just meeting you these two times that we've met out at the house, the studio, the first time we got to know each other, and here in the studio. But for everyone, if they would read Brian's book, A Flight Without Wings, that there's a tremendous quality about you that you have come to appreciate the power and value of compassion for others, which I see as just a great quality for someone to have. That you can feel someone's sadness or pain, and even though you might not understand it in that person, you transcend that. You really come across to that person who is looking to really be heard and validated. Yeah. And I think that is just your qualities can impact, and your book affect millions of people across the world, Brian.
That would be my hope, Dean, that the more people it reaches, obviously, the more people that can get something out of it. The fact that you see it in such depth is, as I said, they're very validating to me, very satisfying. And it's just, you go through different phases of this whereby you help some, you start out, you mentioned that it seemed to lack a religious connection. And that's not by mistake. And anything else that you mentioned in the book was written, or I wrote the book very specifically. Although it seems very simple and almost kind of haphazardly put together, it was by design and not by accident. I feel that there are certain things, there's certain facets of the book, certain facets of my life that I go into in the book, some of which appear to be obviously connected. Some may be connected in more obscure ways. But in an effort to relate to the reader on some level, is what I was trying to do in going through my life, so that I felt that the better I related to the reader, the more they may be able to recognize my honesty in the book. And I think that, you're alluding to me being engaging, although I don't think you used that word, but anyway, I think it's more based on the reader's ability to see my honesty in telling the story. The connection with religion. I mean, my belief is that everyone's, there's some gray area between science and religion where they overlap, and most of us probably find our belief systems in that gray area someplace, combining a certain amount of religion, a certain amount of science. I didn't want to make it denominational in any way, because I felt that I would be possibly restricting the readership or the people that may get something out of it. I didn't want to think that there were, was a certain requisites that you needed to believe in order to get something comforting out of the book. I mean, I didn't feel that you had to go to church every Sunday, like many do, in order to gather some comfort from reading the words. I have my own views on religion and structured religion, and I feel it's a personal thing. It certainly is for me, and I'm not asking the reader to believe what I believe or go to church as often as I think you need to go to church. It's just a matter of, if anything that I would ask the reader would just be to believe the words, because they're my words. It was my experience, and I told them as best I could recollect, and as best as my memory served me, and as well as my vocabulary would allow me to put it on paper. That's what you get with the book. So people that read it can take from it, hopefully, something that will enhance their life or add to their belief system or comfort them in some way. And I would feel that it was a success then.
Well, there's no question about it that you're not trying to convince anyone.
Good.
You're not trying to convince anyone. This is your event that you went through, right, and you're sharing your personal experience. And like anything, there's going to be people that enjoy it, love it, and there's going to be people that don't.
That hate it.
You can't make everyone happy, right, Brian?
That's right, Dean. And you know what? It was a lesson I had to learn early on in the publishing and marketing process, was that I was not going to please everyone. So I will take those that I can please, those that can get something from it, and be happy with that. As you said, it's my experience, my words. I didn't want any interpretation of any kind. The book is not edited. Those are the same words that I could show you in a stapled together manuscript that I wrote myself. And I may have made some mistakes along the way, and I realize that. But again, I didn't want any interpretation at all. Not to say I wouldn't use an editor on my next book, because they're completely valuable and would probably make it very entertaining. But I didn't put this book out to be entertaining. I had hoped it would be simple, informative, and comforting.
It sure is. Let's go back over to, let's cross the Atlantic now and go back over to Rhea. Let's bring in Rhea to this discussion. Rhea.
Hey guys, yeah, just listening here contently. And what am I thinking? I've not read the book, Brian, so
Okay.
I'm taking everything at face value as I hear it.
Mm-hmm.
How intimate. I'm just feeling a really strong sense of intimacy that you shared with people. And I don't suppose if I came across the book that it's a judgmental thing, as it were. It's an intimate, well, does it get any more intimate? I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. It was certainly not from listening to you anyway, darling. I'd say that's pretty intimate stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it leads me on to a question, if you don't mind me asking.
Go ahead.
The other side. Tell me about, I don't know how else to say it. Tell me about what happened on the other side. Could you tell me about that, please?
Okay. What I saw on the other side felt. It started, I believe it was in the hospital where it started, where I felt a separation, if you will, from the physical. I could still hear the nurses and the doctors around me talking about my condition and how to treat it, and as though I wasn't there. And, I think a lot of people experience, like floating on the ceiling and looking down. That wasn't exactly that for me, but my attention was drawn away very quickly from hearing those doctors and nurses to this speck in the bright light. I mean, the bright light that many people refer to. It wasn't a tunnel, as some people do, but there was a certain brightness to it, and it certainly got my attention. And I noticed a little speck off in the distance, and I was just drawn to it, and that's where my focus went. And I couldn't tell you if I was traveling towards it or it was traveling towards me. But as it got closer and larger, ultimately it turned out to be my father, who had passed over years before. And with a lack of sense of time while I was there, I mean, I felt like I was there for hours and hours. But realistically, it was probably only minutes. I just felt that there was so much. It was so peaceful and so pleasant that it's indescribable. And I felt that so much information passed between us, almost telepathically. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of spoken word while I was there. It was surrounded by this purest form of love and the energy connection to other people that were there. It's just difficult to explain. But my father did speak those words to me. You have to go back. And he didn't look anything like he did when I saw him last, when I had last seen him take his last breath and die peacefully. He looked an awful lot younger, maybe 30 years younger than he was when he passed over. How do I put this? My experience with heaven, as I make no secret of, is a very simple presentation. It's really not entertaining. I didn't see, a lot of fancy stuff. As one reviewer put it, I wisely avoided the grandiose of more saccharine accounts. That's a quote from a review, a respected review. And that's exactly how I present it. It's just the basics. It's the bare bones, the meat and potatoes of the experience without a bunch of fluff. Because I think that the fluff has a tendency to turn people off. And I didn't want to do that. I just wanted it to be the basics. Just present the basics and let everyone adopt it or adapt it into their own life and their own belief systems. Hopefully
no, I
you
get
do
that. Right.
Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I know, I get that, darling. No, I'm relating to what kind of relating to what you're saying. And do you find still today that you try to bring that experience back into your mind to understand it further? Is like a kind of, I don't know, a post situation where you try to get more from it? Does that go on?
To some extent, yes. Although I don't refer in my mind back to the actual experience itself, be it hours or minutes. My time is pretty much occupied with me adapting this all into my life. I felt that I was gifted many benefits from being there, many different sensual benefits, and not the five senses that we're familiar with. Senses like awareness or understanding or clarity. Those are the things that I was gifted. I feel a huge increase in my sense of intuition and awareness, and it's frightening at first to be able to talk to people and feel like I'm so far inside their head that they couldn't possibly get away with a lie to me. It can be frightening to deal with, and to organize it in a way that it becomes beneficial in my life. So for me, it's still a journey of discovery. I'm still discovering things and learning to harness them in a way that's positive, and be that for myself or for the people around me and my relationships.
Okay, and just another quick one as well.
Go ahead.
You know what an empath is?
Empath.
Have you ever heard of an empath?
No.
Empathic. They say, according to certain people, that there are people that are either born or become empathic.
Okay.
That they exactly what you describe, really, where you're so attuned to people. It's not a word thing; it's a feeling thing.
Mm-hmm.
And as you describe, you're so far in their heads.
Right.
I've heard that. I've read that before when I've read about empaths. So it might be something to have a little look at, Brian.
Okay, would that be the root of the word for empathy, I would
Absolutely.
assume? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although I hadn't,
under the heading.
Yeah, I hadn't heard it used the way you did. But yeah, sure. I mean, it's again, I mean, it's a hard subject to accept. It's even harder to explain. Sometimes I feel like I don't know how to put this. Sometimes I can feel somebody's feelings so keenly that it brings tears to my eyes. If I feel their pain to the point where it's as though I'm related to them, connected to them, whatever you want to call it, and it actually has brought tears to my eyes just hearing their story. And conversely, the feeling of joy that I have in my heart at someone else's joys or accomplishments or enthusiasm. So I feel like I've tripled my let's see, the times when I would feel that joy for myself. I've tripled that because I feel it for everybody else that's around me. Very powerful, very rewarding, and I wish that everyone could feel the same thing that I do.
Interesting. I'm starting to perceive you as an empath.
Okay.
I've spoke to them before, but they felt as though they were born empaths, and they've said similar things, that they feel other people's feelings so much it can interfere with their life, if you like.
Yeah.
And yeah, it sounds like a familiar story to me, Brian, to be honest. So at the moment, I'm sitting here not knowing you from Adam, as it were, thinking, oh, right, this guy's an empath, or has become an empath. And another quick one as well. Did you actually flatline on the machine when
Yes.
you had your accident?
Yeah.
Have you got the time period of the flatline?
No, funny. I did flatline. I did have to be brought back with CPR. but we couldn't get anybody in Mexico to talk about it. They were so frightened that it was going to happen again to me. Number one, I had to provide a witness to be present in the surgical suite before they would work on me again. And after that, they were in a real big hurry to get me out of there. So I don't know if they had concerns about liabilities or whatever, but I did flatline. It's it's one of the requisites that I feel is important and necessary for to actually have had what's been coined a near-death experience, although it's misused. But according to the explanation that Dr. Ray Moody offers in his book, that's what I would agree with. That it's a flatline death experience where you actually pass over to the other side and are brought back. It's not a near miss or a close call. They may have their own category. So I just try to keep it real that way as an actual flatline death.
No, I understand. I was just curious on the time, really. Anatomically, it gives me a greater understanding of where you were at that point in time by how long the flatline was. But yes, super interesting stuff. Dean, back to you.
Thank you, Rhea. It was terrific, your comments. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Rhea. Anthony, do you have anything that you want to bring to the conversation with Brian?
Yeah, I think the whole story is fascinating. Brian, thank you for being here. I think there's a much, and I'm sure maybe you agree, there's a difference between, and you guys mentioned it before a little bit, spirituality and religion. If you're comfortable kind of elaborating on that and tying it into your experience, because I feel like sometimes those lines are blurred. Somebody could be spiritual and not religious. That's how I personally am. So
I agree with you completely, Anthony. And that's where I label myself. If I was to put a label on myself, I would say that this experience definitely made me more spiritual, but not necessarily more religious. And that may be by definition of the word. My thought on the word is, when you say religious, I'm assuming that you mean following a specific structured religion.
Yeah.
And that's what I might have the problem with. I went to parochial school for 12 or 13 years, up to and including a year of Catholic college. And I wasn't able to find the answers that I had been looking for since grade school. And it's not that I've necessarily turned away, because one of my biggest epiphanies about the peace that I felt came, in a Catholic service. I think it was a funeral. We were sitting there, and part of their liturgy is says that Christ said to some people, "I leave you peace, my peace I give you." And I was holding Lynn's hand at the time, and it was just like, I was like, oh my God, that's the peace I felt. Now it makes some more sense. For I don't know how many years I went to all of that parochial school and heard those words and just, sing-song my way through it, never really stopping to realize what the words meant or what they could have meant. But I don't think being part of a structured religion is necessarily important or necessary to be spiritual and be connected to your God. I think it's a personal thing, and I think if you're true to yourself, then you can be true to your God and live your life. It's about your relationship with other people and being kind and good, and that usually comes around, because that's what goes around. That's what you send around, so that's what comes around. That's the way I look at it.
Speaking of spiritual, why don't we go back over to Rhea? That every show, Brian, Rhea is going to add a Let's Question It segment to the show. So
I was worried about this.
I told you she's good.
Yes, she is.
She's great.
She's very perceptive.
She's great, and she keeps me on my toes. I'll tell you that every day. Besides Sharon, the next woman in my life is Rhea. That keeps me on my toes every single day.
All right, let me see if I can answer this.
We were talking about spiritual, Rhea. I thought this would be an appropriate time to throw it over to you on your Let's Question It segment.
Okay, I've got a few things before I get to the Let's Question It segment, because you've kind of yeah, I'm not going to say what I was going to say, but you've already partly answered it, which is such a shame, but I guess that's the life. But I'm just going to do some lead ups and I'm going to change the topic for a short while and bring it back, if that's okay, Dean.
Whatever you want to do, Rhea. Okay,
so I just wanted to do some ditties. I'm just going to lighten this up a little bit and bring you a couple of ditties that I find always interesting, but really changing the
Rhea,
subject.
if you don't mind me intercepting for a minute, here in the States, some people might, in the U.S. here, especially in New York, might not know what a ditty is.
A ditty is just, the actual definition is a short song, but a ditty in the UK means something very short.
Beautiful.
That's simple. And they're just a few facts kind of thing, such as, did you know Chicago is named after the Italian word for garlic? So I don't know how quite that got there. And in the 1850s, Birmingham in the UK produced half of the world's ballpoint pens. And according to research by a tanning company, women look their oldest at 3:30 p.m. on a Wednesday. The longest cricket match ever played lasted 14 days, only ending because England needed to catch the ship home. And did you know Leonardo DiCaprio is the highest grossing actor never to have acted in a sequel? And it's illegal to sell seaweed in the UK without a license. And finally, a group of giraffes is called a tower. How interesting. Right, now I'm going to go over to another one called On the Spot. I've got 3 questions for you guys, and I'll direct them accordingly. And the first question is, what is the population of the USA? And I'll pass that to you, Dean.
I'd say the population is approximately 335 million people.
Ooh, okay. And what about you, Anthony?
I was going to say 300 million.
And Brian?
I would have said somewhere closer probably to about 3 billion.
3 billion.
Wow.
Interesting.
U.S.
Okay,
U.S. population.
U.S.?
Yeah.
Okay, U.S. now, sorry. I'd be closer to Anthony and Dean on that one. Probably in the high 200s of millions.
Okay. No problem. It's 318.9 million people in the US currently, and the population rate is falling because not many people are having children. Question number 2. Out of that 318.9 million, how many people in the US are on food aid? And I'll pass that to Brian. It's
Food
a tough
aid.
one. Who would guess it? No one.
That'd be strictly a guess. I mean, and I would probably guess it's somewhere between 15 and 18%.
Oh, you went percentage. Very clever. Very clever. 15 and 18%. And Dean, what do you think?
Rhea, I'm going to go by percentage as well, just like Brian did. And I'd say my number would be lower. I'd say somewhere around 8-9%.
8 or 9%. And Anthony?
I'll just go with a number. I'll say 40 million.
Wow, 40 million on food aid out of 318 million. Okay, the number is 98 million.
Wow.
How about that? Just breathe that in for a second.
So it's very close to Brian's percentage.
I was impressed with that, I've got to say. Good call on the percentages, Brian.
It was a guess.
Brian, it sounds like after that, you and Lynn want a dinner. Sharon and I are going to take you guys out to dinner one night.
No, we don't deserve that. It was pretty much an educated guess on my part.
Oh, it was a good guess. Most people wouldn't. I certainly wouldn't have got it, Brian. Right, question number 3. What is the government employee rate per capita head in the USA? So how many people per one employee? 100 to 1, 1 to 1, 1 million to 1? What do you think that is?
Who are you directing that at?
I'm going to go to Anthony.
So this is how many government employees per person?
per capita?
Yeah, per capita. So 100, a million to 1 to 1.
Well, I mean, what do we have? A couple hundred people in Congress, the Senate. I would say it's probably maybe 3 to 1, maybe.
3 to 1. Bearing in mind that a government employee could be a school teacher, a nurse, or if it's state funded, nurses, military.
So it's basically maybe like 300 to 1 then.
300 to 1. Okay. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, I think that my guess would be pretty close to Anthony's, somewhere in the 2 to 500 range. So.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
there
Dean?
you go.
I have to, Rhea, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to have to agree with both Anthony and Brian, because I'm going to be honest with you. That was such a challenging question for me that I was starting to schwitz. When you posed that question, I started to break out. I had to wipe my forehead. That I started to schwitz, and Brian's
Sharon,
laughing.
me too. Sharon.
Because I know what that means.
You do know?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know if you know what that means. I know that Rhea being used to me and Anthony, they've gotten used to some of the Yiddish words, but
Jewish.
I'm just being honest to you guys and my audience. You can't imagine, Rhea, how nervous you just got me.
Oh, bless you, sweetie. Call your wife. She'll mop your brow. Come on, then, out with the number. What is it? What do you think it is?
I'm not. I'd say it's close to what Anthony and Brian said.
So what do we got a rounded up number? 300 to 1? Is that what
Yes.
you're
Make
saying?
it 300 to
That's
1.
right.
Okay, here it comes, guys. The actual figures are 13 to 1.
Wow.
1 to 13. Wow.
Wow.
I
I
know.
didn't even suspect it would be anywhere near that high.
Yeah, neither did I.
So there's more, Brian. There's more. In 1952, it was 23 to 1.
Still a high number.
I know, but if you carry on with the formula under the current model, it means in the not too distant future, everybody is going to work for the government.
Well, at least it'd be nice to get to that one-on-one. You'd have your own government worker.
You would, but obviously there's a problem with that. You're not going to voice your opinion because you're going to lose your job.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
I
would truly
suppose so.
be at government state at that point.
I suppose
Interesting
so.
stuffer. Right, here comes the question that you've already partially answered. What does spiritualism mean to you? Okay, so that's the question for everybody. And Brian, I'm going to give you a rest a minute.
Good.
And I'm going to throw that over to Anthony. What does spiritualism mean to you?
The first word that comes to mind is probably karma. And like Brian mentioned before, it goes around, comes around. So you have to treat everybody with that in mind. And then it can get much deeper than that, and we could spend a whole another few hours on the topic. But at the very, very surface, I would go with the word karma.
Okay, that's really interesting. So you've not angled it at a belief system. It's more just, it's almost sort of Einstein, action and reaction. What goes around comes around.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it can go much deeper, but for now, I'll leave it at that, at the karma for sure.
Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. Dean, what do you think?
Your question, Rhea, immediately what transcended with me is inner feeling, how you feel about yourself day to day and what you do to make yourself feel good. And exactly what I'm doing here today is giving me that spiritualism of feeling good, because I've now got an opportunity to do something that I've always done every day, and that is connect with people, interact with people. And when you threw out your Let's Question It segment about spiritualism, that's what I thought of right away, is what one can do to feel healthy internally, externally. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm having the greatest fun of my life.
Fantastic. How different could they be? Wow. And Brian, can I hear your take on it, please?
Yeah, I suppose my belief would be somewhere in between Dean and Anthony. I agree with Dean in doing things that make you happy. And, I know in his case, but for others, let's say we may have to add in, a requisite to that, or a caveat, if you will. Assuming that's within the bounds of good taste and morality and so forth. Yeah, if that were added, then I would agree with Dean absolutely, completely, and I'm sure that he falls into that category as well. As far as Anthony's response to that, I mean, that's as he said, even it's very basic and simple. I mean, you can go a lot deeper with it, but in a simplistic answer, yeah, that's what it's about. It's about treating others with goodness and kindness, and reaping the rewards from that. Karma being a reward, if you will. It's kind of like paying it forward, and then it gets around back to you. So I think what a lot of the answers fall back on the same premise, the same simple core fundamental things of just being good and kind and loving your fellow man.
Fascinating, utterly fascinating. And nobody has spoke any words of organised religion at all, have they?
No, I don't. I certainly wouldn't agree that you would need an organized religion to live your life that way.
No, I would agree with you as well. But it would be interesting if you did a survey of, I don't know, however many hundreds of people on the street or Dean in Starbucks, what their take on the word spiritualism would be. And I certainly wasn't expecting you guys to say that. So thoroughly interesting as far as I'm concerned. Right. Yeah, no, good stuff. With a number, if we all understand, for example, the number 1, if you said there's one of something, there's no interpretation, is there, as it were? It's a really clear outline. There's one of something. But with words, they're always open for interpretation, aren't they?
Yes.
So I think it leaves a lot of ground for grey area for organised religion and non-organised religion to tread on each other's toes a little bit. Because people interpret them in different ways. Okay, guys, that's it. I'm not going to put you through it anymore. I'm going to throw it back to you, Dean. I've got some news to go at some point, but as and when it happens, sweetie.
I just thank you, Rhea, and I'm finally starting to cool down my body from you, so I appreciate it.
That's funny.
But you're terrific. You're terrific, and this is going to be great on every show, and my guests and the audience, I think, are going to love it. You're terrific, and your voice is just remarkable.
Easy, Tiger.
Nice meeting you, Rhea.
No,
nice meeting you too, Brian.
Rhea's still going to stay with us.
I've got some questions for you yet, Brian. Don't go anywhere.
Okay, sorry.
Brian, I just want to ask you, as we're nearing the close here today, what's next for you? Are you working on another book? And just want to hear what's next for you.
Well, I'm not currently working on another book, unless the thought process falls under that heading. I am thinking about it. I am thinking of certain subject matter. Nowhere close to this book here. Be much more entertaining, much more thought-provoking, I guess. But nothing like this. And right now, I'm spending my time answering questions about this book. Actually, which could,
I got that.
Could
I've
take
got
me
a
forever.
suggestion.
Go ahead.
What about a journey to understanding being an empath?
Well, you know what? I'm going to have to look that up a little bit and do a little research on that, because I wouldn't want to embark out. It's interesting, and I'm going to give it a lot of thought. I just want to make sure that I have the absolute correct definition of the word, so that I know which direction to take my thoughts in if I was going to consider that.
No, I appreciate it. It was just a suggestion.
Yeah,
but
a good
I
one.
have heard what you've said several times over.
It's a good
and
one.
I know exactly where to find it.
Mm-hmm.
And you may be surprised. I'll leave that for you to discover.
Absolutely.
Where you find these people congregate.
Absolutely.
I just want to share that we always encourage the audience to text their name, comments, and where they're located. And we had I want to share a text that I received yesterday right after the show from Jim and Lauren from New York City. That the text said, "Great show!" ! Your mom is fantastic. Great story of Lloyd's of London to your Freeport days and the Devil Dogs. Mom hit all the emotions and brought tears to my eyes as I thought about my late mother. Your mother deserves a big, big hug and a huge kiss. Jim and Lauren from New York City.
That's lovely. Hear, hear.
Rhea, going back to you over in the UK. Anything else you want to do about news?
I'll do the new. I've just got a couple more questions before we part ways with Brian and maybe never speak again. Brian,
Wow, boy, that was an easy letdown, I guess. I'm not coming back.
You didn't, Rhea. Just now when you did that, you didn't even give Brian a chance to break a schwitz. He basically melted to the floor when you hit him with that one.
That's it. Yeah. Go ahead, Rhea. Beat me up some more.
Okay, here it comes. What are you passionate about today? You know, in today, in the here and now, what are you passionate about?
As it relates to my book, or just in life in general?
Just life in general.
Well, I'd have to say that this has taken over. Some of these benefits that I received from passing over and being in that place have taken over my life because it affects all facets of my life. I mean, there's a lot of things that I went into in the book different career choices that I had made that I'm limited now, so I can't do them. So the rewards from the kindness and the love and the goodness that you share in life, that's really taken over my thought process, and expanding on that and how I can relate to that in my life and bring it to others, by example, I suppose. So I mean, it's consuming.
That was one of my questions. Has this consumed you? So you've just kind of answered.
I just answered that. Well, see, I can tell. Remember, I said I can get in somebody's head. So
I know, and I believe you, darling.
Empath. I'm an empath. Remember?
I think you may well be, and I'm sure we'll have you on another show, maybe another day.
Rhea, I'm watching Brian through this whole show, and this is a very intimate topic that we're talking about. Very emotional, intimate experience that he went through personally in life, and I can't tell you how many times he's smiling and laughing from you.
Well, that's good to know. It's good to smile, isn't it? Best medicine and all that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Here's the next one, which leads me to it. Brian, what makes you really laugh?
Oh, boy. What makes me laugh? Yeah, just let me think about it so that I get it right. I think that I laugh at myself more than anything, more than anyone or anybody. I think I laugh at myself when I either fall short of what I claim to be a benefit that I've received from this experience, and maybe I haven't harnessed it or parlayed that into my own life. And then I kind of chuckle to myself if you're saying one thing and here you are, turning away from this person who might be in need. And not that it's not serious, but I just kind of chuckle at myself for falling short at times, and just some of the ways I react to my own ignorance, of the process of a book and the literary process. There's a lot to learn, and I was relatively new at it. So, to answer your question, I guess I probably laugh at myself more than anything.
Okay, no, I get that. Self-deprivation. It's a lovely quality, actually, isn't it?
Thank you.
And here's the last one. What advice would you give to young people just starting out in life and how to put their good foot forward?
Wow. I've always treated things in life relatively fearlessly. Since the experience that I have has strengthened that. But I've never been afraid to take a chance, and I've talked to a few young people, and I just oftentimes they'll tell me I never had the opportunity to do that, and my response to them was If you're telling me that you never had a chance, then I'm going to tell you you never took a chance. So that would be my advice, would be to keep your eyes open as you walk through life and recognize those possibilities and those opportunities that may very well be disguised or obscure. They may bring you untold rewards.
Interesting. So could I sum that up as kind of don't be afraid to take a chance?
Absolutely. Yeah, you could sum it up that way.
Excellent. I like to know. It gives great insight into who you are as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, Dean, back to you. I'll leave you alone now, Brian.
Okay.
Rhea, is there anything before I bring the show to a close that you want to say on the news front?
Yeah, sure. Firstly, this is serious, people. Don't bother going to Turkey. I wouldn't bother going to Turkey. They're going into a state of devolution. They have sacked 15,000 plus government employees, 25,000 plus school teachers for preaching equilibrium, which they shouldn't have been doing. A quick touch on bankers. You know my thing about bankers, Dean. And HSBC are in the news again with Mark Johnson, the global head of the foreign exchange desk, has been charged for pocketing or trying to pocket between 3 and 7 million on a currency exchange. So they're going to deal with him. 2 points on our new Prime Minister, Theresa May, who I'm really starting to like quite a lot. Is she popped over to see the guys in the European Commission to see about triggering an Article 50 about England leaving the EU. And they kind of turned around and said, no, we're not talking to you. You give us a hump. But they said, we will say this. If you want to trade with the remaining 27 countries, you must keep your borders open and let anybody in. So I don't know how they're going to negotiate that. And also she was challenged in the House of Commons about the Trident project that's coming up, which is the renewal of the nuclear arsenal of England. And during the House of Commons speech said, A, should we renew it? And B, a guy gets up from the backbenchers and says, Mrs. May, would you be okay with pressing the nuclear button should the occasion arise? She sprightly leapt out of her seat and said, yes. She said, if anybody is going to come to England and threaten us, they must know that they are not going to get through it consequence-free. So there's that. And the last one is on Rio de Janeiro Olympics, which is taking place like kind of nowish, isn't it, or soon. They've bought 80,000 more sort of managers to manage the influx of people coming into Rio. And they are so worried about the crime situation. So they've got 80,000 people in to guide the people to the tracks or wherever, but they haven't got the money to pay them. So whether they're actually going to be there or not, I don't know. So, and another word on the Olympics, there's been another 50 athletes caught doping it up for one reason or another. And that's me, Dean.
Well, thank you very much, Rhea. Every show, just want everybody to know, Rhea will always be giving news updates, as well as her Let's Question It segment and what you call her ditties. So thank you so much for everything today, Rhea.
You're welcome. I've loved the show. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Rhea.
As with every show, when it comes to a close, I always like to say that we want to hear from all our listeners, that listeners can reach out to us with our free text number that's on the website for U.S. residents. And I want to always give out that number at 631-372-8849, 631-372-8849. We'd love to hear from you. Please include your name, your location, and we will mention you on the show. Please don't forget to like us on Facebook and to hit the subscribe button on the show's YouTube channel. If you would like to leave a comment, use the box that is below. If you'd like to share your story, any of your ideas, and be a guest on the Dean Bleckman Show, just go to deanbleckman.com and look for the email box. Please write me an email. I'd love you to be part of the show, hear your story, what you have to say, and to have the experience of being what we're doing today in the studio. So on that note, I want to thank Brian McLaughlin. Thank you for being here today.
My pleasure, Dean, and thanks for having me.
And I just want to say thank you to your lovely wife, Lynn, for being with us today.
So quiet.
So quiet. And if you don't want to take the dinner bet, we'd love to have you out at our house on a weekend before the summer comes over. Swim, have a good barbecue. I don't know if you like red wine or not, but we'd love to have you out there.
Very nice. Thanks for that invite.
I want to thank Riabo very much over there in the UK. It's unbelievable that the Dean Bleckman Show has someone so incredible like her right on the spot, right on the ground in Europe, right there in the UK. And I thank you very much, Ria. To Anthony, my right-hand person here, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I want to thank all my listeners, everybody that was on the show today listening. And I'll see you again next week on Tuesday at 4 p.m.
You've been listening to The Dean Bleckman Show, live from Long Island, New York. From all of us here, we'd like to thank you for tuning in. We look forward to hearing your comments via Facebook, Twitter, Skype, and email. And don't forget, you can visit the webpage anytime for the up-and-coming guest list. From all of us here, have a good evening.